Welcome to Deep Dive Film School. I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see / hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media. That's right. Our most popular platforms are Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. All right. This week we're going to get into that one scene from one of our favorite movies of all time, Stand By Me, from 1986, written originally by Stephen King.
Yes.
As The Body.
Yep.
Right?
Short story in 4 seasons.
That is
novella.
correct.
Yeah.
And then directed by Rob Reiner, who of course did a variety of things.
Including Misery, another Stephen King film.
That's right. Yeah. Also like The Jerk and Spinal Tap and When Harry Met Sally. Salary?
When Harry got his salary.
He finally got a job.
It's surprisingly entertaining.
Sleepless and Salary? What
Sleepless.
Is that the other one?
Harry and Celery.
All right, forgive that, but whatever. But the scene we are going to do, I think is a scene that probably most everyone would choose. It is Gordy's story.
Yeah, the lard-ass story. And what's interesting about it to me is that usually in a movie that would have something like this in it, where it goes away into a story someone's telling, it would do that gag a couple of times to create a pastiche through the whole film.
Sure.
This movie doesn't. It just does it that one time. And
we do get flashbacks, though.
We do, but I think those are kind of different, right? They're not fictional.
Yes.
And I think there's something about this that makes that really special. And, you know, knowing King's work as well as I do, me and my wife have a Stephen King shrine in our house.
They do.
With all of our books, all of his books and paintings and a whole thing. But you know,
shrine.
Knowing that he does do this kind of stuff in his stories a lot, where he will go into sort of a flight of fancy and he'll go away from the main story to something else. The fact that
it's needed.
Yeah,
it's a bit of relief, especially right after the train scene where they just train dodged in this super scary scene, especially as a kid watching this.
Oh yeah,
in preteens.
Yeah, and being like, oh, this could be one of them could actually get hurt, because by this point in the movie, we've been introduced to Ace Merrill. We understand that like they're looking for a dead kid. Like there's definitely things that
this just brings us back down to earth for a little bit. There's a lot tied into it. Not only is it, kind of one of the just greatest coming of age stories. This is obviously pre-internet, so you're able to absorb a real sense of what it's like to get to know people and have a group of friends and how important that is. And these little moments where you are sitting around a campfire. I can think of dozens of times where we've done this, or with all of our friends, and telling stupid stories and asking what the hell is Goofy, and stuff like that, and that kind of stuff. And I love this scene in particular because it is sitting around a campfire, 14-year-old boys talking shit, but it's also leans into them and their impressions and hopes in Gordy and how creative and what his potential could be as an author, potentially, or a storyteller, or just whatever, and how he can just come up with these stories, and damn, it's a hell of a story.
Well, and it's interesting for us as the audience also, because I think that while we understand that he becomes a writer because the entire story is couched within Dreyfuss's version as the adult Gordy,
the VO.
Yeah, that we've seen him at the very beginning. He's sitting down and writing, and we understand that about him. Also, through the story, everything is built up that his older brother, who was really the one that he was the shining star athlete, John Cusack, early John Cusack role.
Great role.
We understand that with that older brother dying, what does he say? He says, "I became the invisible boy that summer," right? Yeah. And it's so sad, and we realize that like the parents are just devastated. They don't have any time for Gordy. They don't care that he is this incredibly talented writer. They're just completely out to lunch.
Yeah.
And so not only is this his opportunity to shine in front of his friends, it really is River Phoenix's character of Chris Chambers, who has his own crazy baggage. I mean, all the kids do.
I was gonna
maybe except for Vern. Vern just like
Vern's like the best / worst, but it's still, they all have their own traumatic histories, though, right?
And that Chris really is like the last thing he wants to do is turn out like Eyeball, his older brother, right?
Exactly, but I think to the point you're getting at is that this is their escapism. This is themselves are the only ones who actually realize each other, right?
And that so Chris is the one who asks him to tell a story.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I wish to hell I was your dad. Like there's we're dancing around the main scene we're doing, but all of this is so loaded in him asking him to tell a story because he's like, he wants to see his best friend shine.
And also, what's the story about? This kid who gets bullied, right?
It's this kid who gets bullied,
getting revenge,
and he gets the revenge.
He gets this public shaming in the town hall, basically, which is disgusting. But like, I remember watching this and just couldn't believe my eyes the first time I saw this scene. I was just like, what the fuck is happening?
Spectacularly juvenile.
So
it's so perfectly juvenile.
And you're like trapped in this little tent the whole time with all this gross fake looking puke and everything that's lining up to it.
Yeah.
Gordy's VO makes it.
Yeah.
Right? He makes it.
And he doles out the story perfectly, but it's not too perfect of a story. It's a story that a prepubescent kid would write.
Sure.
Right? It's really well written.
Good, though. Yeah.
And the other thing that I'd say is it's so perfectly Stephen King. If you've read a lot of his work, the thing that actually, I would say that even though people are like, oh, it's like the master of horror. And yeah, granted, he has written some super scary shit, but he's also the master of tiny homespun little Castle Rock County with like all the different people in it, right?
Davey Hogan is one of those people.
And Davey Hogan, well, and then like the Benevolent Order of the Antlers and like the Backs and Jacks and the Spacks and Wax, like the DJ guy, right? And like
the local celeb, the big
and just like
star.
that New England ephemera that is so King, right? And this is like perfectly, I mean, the whole movie encapsulates that, but I think that little short story is so like that he drinks castor oil and a raw egg. Like, I'm like, of course, this is like homespun, legendary kind of stuff.
Of course, and we have to cut back to the kids, and even before we were joking about this off camera, but I cherish these moments when they're all like, it's nothing like a cigarette after a meal.
I cherish these moments. What did I say? And there's something about, you talked about us.
Cheesy, but he's right.
You talked about us sitting around a campfire, and I'm like, sure, we can think about that in our like late teenage age and into our 20s. But as a prepubescent, it's like who lived across the street from you. It's who befriended you at lunch. It's not that you have similar interests. It's that
or our friends on Instagram.
Yeah, it's that life weirdly just like mashes some kids together, and that 2 or 3 years they spend that time together, and then they fade. I mean, what does he say at the end? Friends move in and out of your life like busboys in a diner, right? Mm-hmm. And that's very much here. Is that this just happens to be this camaraderie that stuck these 4 boys together
at this time.
And
their individual personalities and roles within the group dynamic was always kind of the funnest part of this movie, right? Because we could all see ourselves in each one of them a little bit.
Yeah.
And although they can shift throughout these real relationships, it's kind of what makes this movie timeless, right? It's kind of why not only this scene, but just this movie as a whole, I think it's just one of my favorite coming-of-age movies.
Well, and you made a really interesting point in talking about how the story of Lardass, in and of itself, is integral to the larger plot of the movie because it's about revenge, and it's not about like big over-the-top revenge. It's about getting even, and it's about
Barfarama.
And it's about ruining something that's important to all these other people who have already decided that you're worthless.
Exactly.
Right? And like it goes to show something about the powerlessness.
Victimless crime.
It's a victimless crime in a sense, but it's like it's power over power for a person who otherwise is powerless. And knowing that, like, Gordy in his life is powerless, Chris in his life, with everybody thinking he's going to be a criminal like his brother, is powerless.
No matter how tough they can act when their parents aren't around or whatever.
It still is like they are their parents' property,
I've
right?
seen a Playboy. That's like this era, right?
Yeah, exactly. and it's like, I think that's a really interesting point that leads to some of the conversations after the story is finished, where Teddy wants to know what happened next, right? After the end of the
Yeah.
Barfarama.
Yeah, he wants a better ending.
He wants a better ending. He's like, what if he went and shot his father and then ran away and joined like the Junior Rangers or whatever? And he's like, something good like that. And you're like,
So that's you.
Yeah, because Teddy wants to murder his dad, right? Like that's why, even though Teddy's dad is a war hero. But I think that kind of an element, or then the one, and I don't know how. All I can think is that this had to have come from real life. That's the only way that this could be this perfect.
The whole episode of the puking and all of it?
No, what Vern asks him. Did Lardass have to pay?
There's just one thing I didn't get.
There's only one thing I didn't understand. There's no way that's not a real statement, because I'm like, oh my God, I was friends with Vern when I was a kid. Like, because
or
that's
were you, Vern?
Fuck, maybe. Oh God. But it's like, it's the most realistic question a kid that age would have. There's only one thing I don't understand. Did Vern have to pay to enter the contest? That's what he's stuck on. And I'm like,
So good.
I love it so much, because that is like, those are those kids that you were friends with at that age.
Last thing I'll say, 100% props to Rob Reiner and how he made and shot this scene, because without the intensity of Lardass, and all of it building up and building up, and you're waiting for it. Poor Davey, like he looks in pure hell in some of these scenes where he lifts up his head. He's like, whoa,
done.
Done.
Yeah.
And it's just dripping with blueberries. It looks disgusting.
And he says, what is in the voiceover? He's like, he didn't think he was eating blueberry pies. He thought he was out and eating cow pies. He was eating like dead rodents, roadkill, like all of that. Like
just anything to make him puke.
The sound design is incredible.
And then just how it looks. Like, it's hard to watch because it's so gross. It's obviously fake.
It's a hose.
Which makes it hilarious. But it's so realistic looking, and it goes everywhere.
It's a hose in the same way as the barfing scene in Monty Python's Meaning of Life, where he's just and it's going
the end
everywhere.
of Kill Bill.
Yeah, totally.
Spraying.
Exactly. But it's so it's very iconic. I think it was one of those things that I remember, growing up.
Oh man.
Growing up and watching this otherwise very quote unquote safe movie at like friends' houses whose parents were really religious, we would be cackling, and mom would be sitting there like, because they're saying Lardass over and over and over, and we are just like, this is the pinnacle of humor and revenge and storytelling, right?
Yeah. I mean, everyone loves when a bully gets payback, right? Or humbled. And now it's a whole tent of assholes.
And it's actually interesting. Like, if we really think about it, if we go a little bit deeper, there's something, and this is maybe the last thing I'll say, is, in King's darker work, I'm thinking of something like It.
Yeah.
There is a real sense that evil is not just something that children perpetrate on other children, but that adults, and not even the adults in your life, like not your parents, not the parents who maybe within a realm like this have the right to be evil to a kid, but random adults can be evil to random kids, right? And in something like in a town like Derry, and in a movie like It, that happens, and it's King's way of describing like, yeah, this is the way that evil perpetuates. And even in something fun like a story like this, the fact that the mayor calls him Lardass.
Yeah.
That kids are going boom, baba, boom, and adults in the audience are laughing at this boy, right? And you're like, the fact that Gordy has that perspective about the way the world works at that age really says something pretty loaded, though, of like, no, people are mean. Like, even adults are calling him Lardass. Like, adults who should fucking know better. Yeah. And so the fact that even they're part of the revenge, it's not just a kid getting revenge on other kids, right?
Everyone gets humbled.
Everybody gets humbled. There's something about that you go, oh,
humble pie, would you say?
last thing I'll say. What's the point of a pie eating contest? It's so gross.
I don't.
And none of them actually finish the whole pie,
I don't know
right?
if I've ever actually seen one, other than in the movies.
That's a really good...
I'm sure they are there.
Comment if you've actually seen a real in-life pie eating
It's like
contest.
the moon landing. It
Never happened. It's built by Hollywood.
But I do agree with what you're saying here, and it all comes to head because people do like that comeuppance, right? And it's reflected by the boys' reactions even before Teddy wanted a cooler ending. They're just like, yeah,
yes,
they're just couldn't believe, it's so great. And then, it calms them down. They go on to talk about other things throughout the night.
Yeah.
They keep watch, do all the
whatever kids talk about before they discover girls.
So, you know what? I cherish these podcasts, Sherlock.
Oh,
so,
buddy.
Thanks for doing this with me. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe. We are on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Join us there. Next week, we are going to do a Forgotten Gem from our Cyberpunk Festival. We're going to do the Catherine Bigelow movie, Forgotten Strange Days.
Strange Days.
Worth the conversation. So come back and join us there, and we'll see you then.
Bye, you guys.
Thanks.